He's called perhaps the greatest NBA dunker of all time, a showman unlike any other. During his time in the league, Vince Carter was a player that fans absolutely loved to watch, and he became a hero to the people of Toronto and beyond. But there's so much more to Carter than just his ability to crush a backboard. Did you know that his family greatly altered his life and was actually a big reason that he got into the league? There's a ton to learn about Vince Carter, and I bet there's info in this video that not even you knew. It all started in the bright, warm sunshine of Florida. Vince Carter was born in Daytona Beach on January 26, 1977 to his parents Michelle and Vincent Carter Sr. Right from the very beginning, basketball would be a major part of Vince's life. Even before he could talk or walk, he was familiar with the game. That's partly because his father, Vince Sr., also loved basketball, and he passed that love on to his son. Actually, just days after Vince was brought home from the hospital, his father would toss a little Nerf basketball over his son's crib, which was probably a delightful show for Vince to watch as a newborn. That's the sort of parenting I can get behind. Vince Sr. was a massive basketball fan and player. After receiving his bachelor's degree from Shaw University back in 1970, Vince Sr. dove headfirst into his passion for basketball. This would eventually result in him playing a bit and then finding even more success as a coach. He would work for Brentwood High School in Los Angeles, Northview High School, and others. Vince Sr. tried hard to teach his son about basketball, even before he knew his ABCs, and this led to a few problems at home. Carter's mom would later admit that she was furious at her husband because of his insistence on playing basketball with such a young baby. Get this, Vince Sr. would prop up his young son in his bed and then toss the basketball to him. Marquette star Oliver Lee, who happens to be Vince Jr.'s uncle, took part in the fun too. Between them, they had the cutest game of basketball ever. And Vince Jr.'s mom wasn't having it. "I thought they were going to let him fall off the bed," she later told ESPN. From all accounts, Vince Sr. is a good man who is always friendly and supportive. The people who work with Vince Sr. and play for him have always praised him and his personality. But just because those who have worked for and under Vince Sr. like him doesn't mean that his wife did. Sadly, when Vince was just 7 years old, his parents split up and got a divorce. This was the most trying moment of young Vince's life. His mother and his father, while not a good match for each other, were always big sources of support for their young son and his siblings. When Vince Sr. and Michelle split, it created a whole new life for Vince, one that would ultimately lead to him dominating the NBA. Michelle is a teacher, and her desire to encourage her son to grow and learn has always played a part in his drive and his desire to make the most of himself. After splitting with Vince Sr., Michelle found her second husband, Harry Robinson, who was also a teacher. As you can imagine, having a father who is a coach and a mother and stepfather who are teachers created a home life that fostered Vince being his very best and always believing in himself. And while that would eventually help him become a sensational basketball player, it also helped him in other parts of his life at a young age too. Did you know that Vince Carter almost pursued a career of being a musician? Yep, we came close to missing out on the talents of Carter on the court because he fell in love with music. He grew up worshiping basketball icons, especially Dr. J, Julius Erving. According to Carter, Erving was one of the first basketball players who turned dunking into an art form. As a young boy with a basketball-loving dad, Vince idolized Dr. J and envisioned a future when he'd someday be rising up and creating monster dunks that got the crowd on its feet. But before he followed a path that led him to the Toronto Raptors and beyond, Vince actually did dive into playing music. When Vince entered the 6th grade, his mother encouraged him to expand his horizons and try his hand at music. Studies have shown that playing music at a young age can help the development of a child in many ways, so it's no surprise that someone as supportive, loving, and caring as Michelle would want her son to give it a shot. And not only did he try it, but Vince absolutely loved playing music. With Michelle's encouragement, Vince picked up an instrument in the 6th grade. The first one that he gravitated to was the saxophone. And to say that Vince had a good teacher supporting him was an understatement. His stepfather Harry happened to be a local high school band director. Right away, Vince fell madly in love with playing and actually imagined himself doing it full-time for a living. He did so well with the sax that he quickly moved on to the trumpet, followed by other percussion instruments too. With the guidance of Harry and the cheerleading of his mom Michelle, Vince let music become a huge part of his life as a young man. In fact, he would even become a drum major for his marching band at Mainland High School. Years later, Carter opened up about his love of music. "It was different, but I enjoyed it," he told ESPN. At that point in his life, he was a budding sports player too, but his teammates didn't give him too hard of a time for flexing his musical muscles. "It didn't discourage me," Carter stated proudly. From his mother and stepfather, he was given a love of learning and music. From his father, a love of sports. That led to Carter being a very busy and happy young adult. Carter was being pulled in a couple of directions at the same time because of his folks' different passions and parenting styles, but he was able to make it work. As junior high ended and high school began, Carter was becoming both a musical prodigy and an athlete too. He played football for Mainland High until he broke his wrist in his freshman year, but that didn't slow him down. You know that when someone has that winning spirit, they'll find ways to play. So he simply moved over to volleyball when football was taken off the table. Believe it or not, Vince Carter was one heck of a volleyball player in high school, averaging 24 kills per match. Because of that, he was named the Volusia County Player of the Year. But around that time, basketball really started to take center stage for Carter, partly because of how much his father loved the game. However, it wasn't just Vince Sr.'s basketball passion that got his son on the court. The young man underwent a major growth spurt and shot up from 5'7" to 6'1". He took over the starting point guard position for Mainland's varsity team, ended the season with 300 points and 60 assists, and caught the attention of multiple schools across the country. The rest is, of course, NBA history. We all know how Vince went on to become an 8-time All-Star and find great success first with the Toronto Raptors, then the Nets, Magic, Suns, and more. He was the NBA Rookie of the Year and, of course, the Slam Dunk Contest champion in 2000. And through it all, the good and the bad, the highs and lows, Vince was still greatly supported by his family. But it wasn't just his parents rooting him on. Carter has several siblings that have remained close to him through the years that believe in him just as much as he does. Chris Carter is Vince's brother, and sadly, his life hasn't been as blessed and exciting as Vince's. Chris was born in 1979 and, like his brother, was a very smart kid with a ton of potential. Unfortunately, he got caught up with the wrong crowd and was never able to deliver on all his promise. At just 18 years old, Chris was arrested for selling green and things quickly escalated from there. He would eventually get into much harder drugs, such as ecstasy and cocaine, and law enforcement became a near permanent fixture in his life. Years later, Chris would speak publicly about the troubles he ran into. "The only reason I sold drugs was because I wanted my own independence. I was just merely at it for the money and the fame that came with it," he said. He went on, "I'm pushing my family away and I'm pulling more garbage in, but the garbage was giving me the attention I was looking for. Everybody needed me. I got all the attention I needed." It must have been difficult for both Vince and Chris to see each other go down such wildly different paths. But even though Vince was starting to become a huge star, he still stuck by his brother and never stopped supporting him. When Vince was finding success as an athlete, he tried his hardest to keep his brother close to him and on the right path. He even got him a job in South Carolina with his first agent. But that didn't stop Chris from repeatedly making the wrong choices and straying from what was healthy, even though his family was trying their hardest to guide him. After so many false starts and run-ins with the law, Chris finally took sobriety seriously. Late one night, he called his mother after ingesting 6 ecstasy pills, sure that he was going to die. "I thought my heart was coming out of my chest. I told her I checked myself into a detox and asked for help," Chris said. Chris's struggles have had a massive impact on Vince and his outlook on the world, and they've also influenced his mom, too. Michelle was already greatly moved by and involved in important causes, such as helping underrepresented children and families. This meant a lot to Vince as well. After seeing the troubles that his brother went through, Vince wanted to reach out and help those in need. Together with Michelle, they set up the Embassy of Hope, a foundation that offered assistance, care, and guidance to those who need it most. They worked together to donate a lot of money to causes like this, including $1.6 million to build a treatment center called the Vince Carter Sanctuary for addiction in their hometown. Additionally, they helped construct a multi-purpose building for activities at the center, which was named after Michelle. "I've seen a lot of skilled and educated young people throw it all away," Michelle said when their generous donation was announced. "There were some times when I thought, I'm going to wind up burying my child. I think if you are the parent or the caregiver or the older brother, somebody has to say, okay, enough is enough. We've got to do something about this," she said, underscoring just how personal this cause is for both her and Vince. We haven't heard of Chris's status lately, but one can only hope that with the love and care he gets from Vince, his mother, and others, he's back on the right path and living a healthy life. Vince has 2 other siblings, his half-brother Jeff and his half-sister Alicia. We don't know a lot about Alicia, she's decided to stay out of the public eye, but she's apparently just as supportive of her half-brother as everyone else. As for Vince's half-brother Jeff, it probably doesn't surprise you to learn that he's also in basketball. Not only can Jeff play ball, but he's made a living off of it. For years, he's been the Brooklyn Nets Community Relations Director. So, like his brother, he loves basketball, and like his mother, he wants to help the neighborhoods around him too. But he's done even more than that. He also led the Vince Carter Youth Basketball Academy, assisting young people to find their skills both on and off the court. It's clear that all of the siblings get along well and are often there for each other. In fact, Vince and Jeff have played together for charity games and fundraisers, which definitely gives fans something fun to see. Over the years, Vince has added to his family in multiple ways. It started with his first marriage to Ellen Rucker, who was his high school sweetheart and one of his biggest sources of support at a young age. After getting married in 2004, Vince and Ellen welcomed a daughter, Kai Michelle. Unfortunately, Vince and Ellen's marriage wasn't meant to last, and the two split up in 2006, although they reportedly stay close and are good co-parents despite their differences. But Vince wouldn't stay single for long. He would later marry his second wife, Sandy, who is a certified fitness trainer for the National Academy of Sports Medicine. Sandy and Vince have welcomed 2 children into the world, a son and a daughter. They keep their home life relatively private, but images of the family have shown nothing but smiles from the Carter fam. Now, there is one other family member we haven't talked about yet, and I saved it for last because it's almost too good to be true. When you think of basketball in the 2000s, Vince definitely comes to mind as one of the best to play the game. But so does Tracy McGrady, the 7-time All-Star and 2-time scoring champion who won Most Improved Player of the Year in 2001. Vince and Tracy are in fact second cousins, and the story of how they found this out is an all-time classic. Carter and McGrady were participating in some games at Chapel Hill in the run-up to the 1997 NBA draft. At one point in the week, Tracy told Vince that he wouldn't be around at the end of the week because he had to attend a family reunion. A few days later, Carter received a call from his grandma. He picked up the phone and expected to hear his grandmother's voice, but instead, it was Tracy. Apparently, Tracy made it to the family reunion, where he met Carter's grandma and found out they were related. What a small world. It was made even smaller a few years later when both Vince and Tracy would light up the scoreboard for the Toronto Raptors together. They remain close to this day. That is something that's true for everyone in Vince Carter's family. They're all still close to him. He's lived quite a life and done so many great things that most people never get the chance to do. That's possible not only because of his legitimate natural skill, but the unending and unwavering support of his mother, father, stepfather, siblings, spouses, and even his cousin. You know, not all NBA players have had a life as easy as Vince Carter's. Some people have had their fair share of really troubling moments. Take Dennis Rodman, for example. That guy has been through a lot. Want to learn more about his family, his career, and his wild off-the-court antics? Well, you're in luck. We've got all of that information in this video right here.